Maya had nothing but envelopes and grit. Her first investment, just $5 into an index fund. Now, she's debt-free and growing. That's how you start. Full story, how to start investing with no money. A guide for beginners. Maya Alvarez stood at the window of her small apartment, the late evening glow painting the city in strokes of gold and shadow. From 6 floors up, the skyline looked alive. Glowing office towers, flashing billboards, restaurants spilling light on crowded sidewalks. People hurried past, briefcases in hand, earbuds in place, faces intent on something beyond the moment. Maya pressed her palm against the cool glass. She wondered, not for the first time, what it might feel like to be one of them. Not just someone rushing to his second job or calculating which bill could wait another week, but someone with money working quietly in the background, building a life even while they slept. Investing. The word had haunted her lately. She'd heard it whispered at work by colleagues who joked about their portfolio, as if it were as ordinary as their lunch order. She'd seen it plastered on podcasts. She couldn't quite bring herself to click. She'd scrolled past TikToks of 20-year-olds bragging about dividends like they were party favors. And all of it made her stomach twist. Because Maya didn't have a portfolio. She didn't even have savings. At 29, she lived paycheck to paycheck, balancing rent, groceries, student loan payments, and the occasional splurge on takeout when the exhaustion of back-to-back shifts drowned her discipline. She had no family wealth to fall back on, no inheritance waiting in the wings, no emergency cushion to soften the blow of life surprises. She had nothing. Or at least, that's what she told herself. But the truth was more complicated. One Friday evening, she found herself at a bookstore, lingering in the finance aisle. The glossy covers seemed to scream at her. Get rich in 10 years. Your first million. Investing for absolute beginners. She pulled one off the shelf and flipped through, her eyes catching on words like compound interest, ETFs, and index funds. It was another language. She felt the familiar sting of intimidation, the same way she'd felt in high school when math problems made her freeze, or when college classmates debated internships she couldn't afford to take. She slipped the book back on the shelf. Maybe investing wasn't for people like her. But that night, as she sat at her kitchen table with a lukewarm cup of tea and a pile of unopened bills, the thought wouldn't leave her alone. What if she could start anyway? What if no money didn't mean no chance? The kettle clicked as it cooled. Her phone buzzed with a bank alert. Balance low. She exhaled, a shaky sound in the stillness of the apartment. This was the hook, though she didn't know it yet. The beginning of the unraveling, the start of the shift. Because the truth was, Maya was about to discover something powerful. You don't need thousands of dollars to begin investing. You don't need Wall Street connections or family wealth. What you need is knowledge, consistency, and the willingness to start small. So small, in fact, that it feels almost laughable. But in that laughter, in that, what's the point, lies the seed of transformation. And Maya? She was ready to plant it. The conflict arrived the next morning. It started with a conversation at work. She was in the break room, pouring coffee into a chipped mug she'd brought from home. A few coworkers were crowded around a phone, laughing. Dude, my Robinhood stock went up again, one of them said. I made like $50 just sitting here. 50? That's nothing. Another scoffed. I've got crypto gains that paid for my car down payment. They chuckled, tossing numbers back and forth like poker chips. Maya smiled politely, retreating to her desk. She sipped the bitter coffee, her throat tight. $50. That was nearly a week's worth of groceries, if she stretched it right. And they were calling it nothing. She wanted in. But her reality mocked her. Her checking account held $117.43, and next week's rent loomed like a storm cloud. How could someone invest with no money? That night, she sat down with her laptop, determination outweighing her exhaustion. She typed into the search bar, how to start investing with no money. The results were overwhelming, but something caught her eye, fractional shares. She clicked, reading with growing fascination. For the first time, investing didn't sound like an exclusive club. Fractional shares meant you could buy just a sliver of a stock, $5 here, $10 there. Suddenly, the untouchable became reachable. Another article mentioned apps with no minimums. Acorns, Robinhood, Fidelity. She learned about index funds, mutual funds, the magic of compounding. Her heart raced, as if she were uncovering a secret world. The fear was still there, of course. A voice whispered, "You'll lose it all. You don't belong here." But another voice, quieter, steadier, replied, "You've lost more to inaction than you ever could to learning." She closed her laptop at midnight, eyes burning. For the first time in years, she didn't feel powerless. She felt curious. That was the beginning. The insight came slowly, in fragments. Maya realized that investing wasn't about throwing thousands of dollars into the market on day one. It was about habits, about mindset, about seeing money not just as something to spend or save, but as something that could work for her, even while she slept. She started small. One week, she skipped her usual Friday night takeout and put $10 into a beginner investing app. The next week, another $10. It felt almost ridiculous at first. $10? What difference could that make? But when she opened the app and saw her balance growing, even just by cents, something inside her shifted. This wasn't about the amount. It was about the act, about claiming a seat at the table she'd once thought was locked to her. And with each deposit, her confidence grew. She began keeping a notebook, scribbling terms she didn't understand, and looking them up later. ETF, dividend, diversification. Each word was a step into the unknown, a puzzle piece clicking into place. And for the first time, Maya started to see her future differently. She imagined herself years down the line, not wealthy beyond imagination, but stable, secure, maybe even free. The resolution of scene one wasn't fireworks. It wasn't a sudden windfall or viral success. It was quieter than that. It was Maya, sitting at her kitchen table again, the same lukewarm tea beside her, the same stack of bills. But this time, she was smiling faintly, tapping confirm on her phone. $5. Her first real investment. And it was enough. The morning after Maya made her first $5 investment, she woke up earlier than usual. The faint light of dawn crept through the blinds, slanting across her small bedroom in pale blue stripes. She lay still for a moment, phone in hand, staring at the app screen. She had fallen asleep looking at the night before. $5.02. 2 cents. That was all the growth. 2 cents she hadn't worked for, hadn't sweated for, hadn't earned by standing on her feet for 10 hours. It had arrived while she slept, silently, invisibly. And yet, those 2 cents carried a weight out of proportion to their size. For the first time in years, Maya felt as though her money was moving on its own, not rushing out the door in bills, not dripping away in interest, but leaning forward, however slightly. It was ridiculous, she thought, laughable even, but she couldn't stop smiling. The smile faltered when she swiped over to her checking account balance. $117.43. Rent was due in 4 days. Her Metro card had only enough for 3 more rides. And she needed groceries. Reality pressed down hard. How could someone like her, with balances that low, even consider investing? She dragged herself out of bed and into the kitchen, where her dented stovetop percolator hissed as coffee bubbled up into its glass knob. The smell was strong, slightly burnt, but it wrapped her in familiarity. She poured herself a mug and sat at the table. The same wobbly table where she'd once crammed for exams, cried over breakups, and balanced bills by the dim glow of a single lamp. This morning, though, she added something new to the ritual, her notebook. She opened it to a blank page and wrote across the top, "What can I cut to invest?" It wasn't a hopeful exercise. It was survival. Her pen scratched slowly, listing out everything she could think of. Netflix subscription, $14. Friday night takeout, $1.25, 30. Daily corner store snacks, $1.10, 15. Gym membership she hadn't used in 6 months, $20. Occasional online impulse buys, $1.40, 50 a month if she wasn't careful. She stared at the list. Her stomach knotted. Each item had once felt like a lifeline, little escapes, tiny luxuries that made her long weeks bearable. Canceling them felt like cutting away parts of herself. And yet, she did the math. If she cut most of these, she could free up almost $100 a month. That was $1,200 a year. The thought made her pulse quicken. $1,000 invested, even slowly, even quietly, was a completely different future than the one she was staring down right now. She closed her eyes and remembered the words she'd read the night before. Compound interest. Invested money wasn't just money. It was a seed. And seeds, given time, grew. Her eyes opened, sharper now. She circled gym membership in her notebook and slashed through it. Done. She hadn't gone in months, and walking the neighborhood was free. Next, she cut streaming. She could use the library, YouTube, even nothing. She drew lines through snacks and takeout with a heavier hand, promising herself she'd reduce, not eliminate. Her hand trembled slightly as she wrote beneath the list. This is my investment money now. It was only a sentence, but writing it made the choice feel real. The first real test of her commitment came 3 days later. It was Friday night, and the Thai restaurant on the corner sent waves of basil and garlic into the street. The windows were fogged with steam. Laughter drifted from inside. Maya stopped walking. Her stomach growled. $12. That was all it would take. $12 for a carton of noodles, a little cup of curry, the relief of not cooking in her tiny, cluttered kitchen. Her hand hovered over her wallet. But then she pictured the app screen again. The green line, edging upward. $5.02. Her 2 cents. She inhaled sharply, turned away from the door, and walked past. Each step felt heavy, almost cruel. But when she got home, scooped rice and beans into a chip bowl, and sat alone at the table, something inside her swelled. She opened her notebook and wrote, I just invested $12 by not spending it. Her meal was bland, but the words fed her something deeper. The month unfolded like this. Temptation after temptation. Small victories carved from discipline. By the end of it, Maya had transferred $50 into her investing app. $50 that once would have disappeared into forgotten subscriptions, impulse snacks, or steaming cartons of noodles. $50 that now had a chance to grow. The number was modest, humble, but for Maya, it was monumental. Then came the moment she decided to share. One afternoon at work, her coworker Lena noticed she'd stopped joining them for takeout lunches. What's up, Maya? You want some kind of health kick? Lena asked, cracking open a soda. Maya hesitated. The words felt fragile on her tongue, but she spoke them anyway. I'm investing. Just small amounts. Like $10 here, 20 there. Lena laughed, not cruelly, but with the easy dismissal of someone who didn't understand. You can't invest with no money, girl. You need thousands. Otherwise, it's not worth it. The words stung. They echoed her own late-night doubts. But instead of folding, Maya surprised herself. Maybe, but I figured it's better than nothing. And nothing's what I had before. Lena shrugged, turned back to her phone. But Maya's words stayed in the air, solid and undeniable. That night, she wrote them in bold letters across a fresh page. Better than nothing. She began experimenting with new tools. Roundup investing apps caught her eye, the kind that rounded up your purchases and funneled the spare change into investments. A coffee for $2.75 became $3, with a quarter set aside to grow. It seemed almost too small to matter. But at the end of her first week, she'd invested $3.12 without even noticing. Small doesn't mean weak, she whispered to herself. Small means starting. Her notebook filled with these phrases, half mantras, half affirmations. They weren't just reminders, they were armor. One quiet Sunday, Maya performed a ritual that would stay with her for years. She spread her bills across the table, the way she always did. Rent, utilities, loan statements. The air was heavy with the scent of coffee. Normally, this ritual filled her with dread. But today, she added a new envelope to the pile. In bold letters, she wrote one word: investing. She slipped a crisp $20 bill inside. It wasn't much, but it was hers. A physical reminder that she wasn't just reacting to her circumstances anymore. She was building. She held the envelope in both hands, eyes burning with unshed tears. She whispered, better than nothing. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel powerless. She felt like a participant, not in a game she'd been excluded from, but in her own story. Maya sat in the library on a Tuesday evening, the silence pressing around her like a weight. The smell of old paper and fresh ink filled the air. She had always loved this place as a girl. Rows upon rows of stories waiting to be borrowed, lives stacked neatly in spines. But tonight, she wasn't here for novels. On the table before her lay 3 books. Investing for Beginners, The Little Book of Common Sense Investing, and personal finance made simple. Her notebook lay open, pen poised. She had promised herself she would stop scrolling mindlessly and start studying seriously. No more half-learning from quick articles. No more skimming YouTube videos with flashing graphs. If she was going to do this, she had to learn the language. The first book opened with words she underlined immediately. An index fund is a way to own a small piece of many companies at once, spreading out your risk. She read the sentence again and again. Slowly, painfully, it began to make sense. Instead of picking one shiny company and praying, she could spread her dollars like seeds across a field. If one crop failed, the others could still grow. Her pen scribbled in her notebook. Index fund equals safety net. But the words felt strange. Safety? Investing had always seemed like gambling to her. She flipped pages. Charts of compound growth leapt out at her, jagged lines rising upward over decades. One graph showed $50 invested every month for 30 years, growing into tens of thousands. She stared at it, heart pounding. The math looked like magic. For so long, her money had only shrunk. Bills drained it. Late fees devoured it. Emergencies stole it. Now she was looking at proof that money could grow. Quietly, steadily, invisibly. But then came the fear. The next chapter spoke of market downturns, of years when balances dropped, of red numbers and shrinking portfolios. Her throat tightened. What if she put her tiny, hard-earned dollars into this system and lost them? What if every sacrifice, every skipped meal and canceled subscription evaporated in a storm of red lines? She closed the book. Her chest felt heavy. That night, back in her apartment, Maya sat at the kitchen table with her laptop glowing. She typed into the search bar, "Do people lose money investing?" The answers were blunt. Yes. Yes, they did. The market went up and down. Portfolios shrank and grew. Sometimes people panicked and pulled their money out at the worst time. She sat back, staring at the ceiling. Could she handle that? Could she watch her balance fall and not run? Her mind flicked to her co-workers again, bragging about their wins. They never spoke about their losses. She wondered how many of them had tasted both. She thought of her mother, too. How she'd worked double shifts, cleaning houses, and never once talked about investing. "We're not those people," her mother used to say when bills piled up. "We don't play with money." Maya pressed her palms to her eyes. Was she playing? Or was she finally learning the rules of a game that had always been hidden from her? The conflict sharpened a week later when she downloaded 2 apps, Robinhood and Fidelity. Her hands trembled as she created her account. The screens were clean, inviting, filled with bright colors and upward-pointing graphs. She scrolled through stocks with familiar names: Apple, Tesla, Amazon. Each price tag made her stomach drop. Hundreds, even thousands per share. "This isn't for me," she whispered. But then she found it, fractional shares. A single slice of Apple stock for $5. A sliver of Tesla for $10. Her finger hovered over the buy button, heart pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. Click. Confirmation buzzed on the screen. She now owned 0.02 of a share of Apple. Her breath left her in a rush. It was absurd. Laughable. 2 cents of a company worth billions. And yet, the absurdity gave way to awe. She was no longer an outsider. She was, in some microscopic way, a shareholder. She scribbled in her notebook that night. Even slivers matter. But knowledge alone wasn't enough. The more she learned, the more overwhelming it became. Index funds, ETFs, dividends, bonds, Roth IRAs, 401ks. The words swirled in her head like a storm. Some nights she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she'd ever understand enough to do this without messing it all up. Her fear wasn't just about losing money. It was about looking foolish, about proving her mother right, that she was playing with money, chasing a dream meant for other people. The breaking point came one Friday. She checked her app and saw the balance had dropped by $1.47. It was nothing, a single coffee. But to her, it felt like proof of every fear. She sat at the table, staring at the red numbers, tears burning her eyes. "What am I doing?" she whispered. "What if I'm not built for this?" The silence of the apartment pressed in. For the first time, she almost deleted the app. The insight arrived unexpectedly, through a voice she hadn't expected to listen to. Her coworker Marcus, the quiet IT guy, caught her staring at her phone during lunch break. "You investing?" he asked, his voice casual. Maya flushed. "Trying. Not very good at it." Marcus shrugged. "You don't need to be good. You just need to be consistent." She blinked at him. He leaned back in his chair. "Look, the market goes up and down. It always does. If you check every day, you'll drive yourself crazy. But if you keep putting money in little by little, month after month, it grows. That's the whole game. Patience. Patience." The words sank into her like water to dry soil. That night, she wrote it in her notebook in all caps. "Patient money grows." She flipped back through her pages, tracing the mantras she'd written before. Better than nothing. Small means starting. Even slivers matter. Now, she added another. Patience is power. It wasn't about quick wins. It wasn't about timing the market. It was about showing up, week after week, even when it hurt. Even when the numbers dipped. Especially then. Resolution came quietly, as it often did. One Saturday morning, she sat at the table with her notebook and her bills. The investing envelope lay beside her, thicker now with 20 she'd slipped in over the weeks. Her app showed $125 in fractional shares. The number had dipped and risen, but it was moving forward. She smiled faintly, tracing her finger along the word she'd written in bold. Patience. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was gambling. She felt like she was planting. And planting, she realized, always looks like loss at first, a seed buried in the dark. But given time, the green shoots rise. The end of the month always carried the same ritual for Maya. A kitchen table crowded with envelopes, bills fanned out like cards in a rigged game she could never win. But this month was different. The new white envelope sat at the top of the pile, its single word, investing, written in bold marker. It was slimmer than she wanted, but thicker than she expected. $20 bills folded neatly inside, the physical proof of her sacrifices. Maya stared at it for a long time, sipping bitter coffee from her cracked mug. Her chest swelled with something she hadn't felt in years, quiet pride. But pride didn't pay rent. She spread the rest of her bills out across the table, scribbling numbers in her notebook. Rent, utilities, groceries, loan payments, bus fare. The math tightened like a noose. Every dollar seemed already claimed, already spoken for. "How am I supposed to invest consistently?" she murmured aloud, "when every dollar already belongs somewhere else?" The question pressed against her ribs like a weight. Investing felt less like planting seeds and more like trying to squeeze water from stone. She needed a system. That week, during her lunch break, she found herself scrolling through personal finance forums. One phrase kept popping up: zero-based budgeting. She clicked a thread, curiosity outweighing her skepticism. "Every dollar has a job," the first post read. "With zero-based budgeting, you assign every dollar you earn to a category: rent, groceries, savings, investing, fun. By the time you're done, your income minus expenses equals zero. It forces you to be intentional." She chewed her lip. Intentional. That word pulsed with meaning. At home, she grabbed her notebook and began. Income, $2,150 after taxes. Expenses, rent $850, utilities $120, groceries $300, loans $200, bus $75. The numbers stacked up. She carved out categories for smaller things: phone bill, toiletries, laundry. She added a line for investing. Her pen hovered. How much? She settled on $50. It seemed both laughably small and terrifyingly large. But she wrote it down. $50. When she subtracted everything, the total came to zero. For the first time, her budget wasn't just a loose hope. It was a plan. She whispered the phrase aloud. Every dollar has a job. The first test came that weekend. Her friends invited her out for drinks, a rare splurge she'd usually allow herself. But when she checked her budget, money was already gone. She stared at the message thread, thumb hovering over the keyboard. She typed, "Can't tonight. Saving." Her chest tightened as the responses rolled in. "Come on, you never come out. It's just a drink. You deserve it. Don't be boring, Maya." She tossed her phone onto the couch, blinking hard against the sting in her eyes. It wasn't that she didn't want to go. She wanted desperately to laugh, to feel normal. But normal had cost her too much for too long. Instead, She boiled pasta, poured a glass of water, and opened her notebook. She wrote across a fresh page. Discipline feels lonely, but it builds freedom. Her mother noticed, too. One Sunday afternoon, Maya visited her parents, carrying a bag of groceries to help out. Her mother frowned as she unloaded cans onto the counter. "You're too skinny," her mother scolded. "You need to eat better. Stop saving every penny." Maya hesitated. She wanted to explain, to tell her mother that she wasn't starving herself, that she was finally building something. But when she opened her mouth, the words tangled. Her mother had lived paycheck to paycheck her entire life. The idea of investing felt like a luxury, a game played by strangers on Wall Street. So Maya just smiled softly. "I'm fine, Mama. I promise." But in the quiet moments that night, the doubt returned. Was she being foolish? Was she depriving herself of joy, of connection, of food even, for a dream that might take decades to materialize? The conflict sharpened when her app balance dipped again. She had $175 invested now, spread across fractional shares of Apple, Microsoft, and a broad index fund she'd chosen after hours of reading. But the market had slumped. Her balance dropped by $7.42 in a single day. Her stomach twisted. $7 was a bus pass, a bag of rice, 2 gallons of milk. She slammed her laptop shut, heart racing. The fear was suffocating. "Why am I doing this?" she whispered. "Why am I putting money I can't spare into something that can vanish overnight?" The silence of the apartment pressed in, heavy and suffocating. She almost pulled the money out, almost deleted the app, but then her eyes fell on the envelope sitting on the counter. "Investing," written in bold marker. She picked it up, running her thumb across the letters. The weight of the bills inside grounded her. This wasn't just about numbers on a screen. This was about intention, about proving to herself that she could choose long-term growth over short-term comfort. She opened her notebook and wrote, in large, shaky letters, "Fear is temporary. Growth is permanent." The insight arrived slowly, as most did. She began to see that budgeting wasn't about deprivation. It was about choice. Every dollar she assigned was a vote. A vote for her rent, her groceries, her bus fare. A vote for her freedom. And investing, even in tiny amounts, was her way of voting for her future. She began carrying cash in envelopes for groceries, transportation, and fun. The physical act of pulling bills out made her decisions tangible. When the envelope was empty, she stopped. It wasn't easy. Some weeks, she stood in the grocery aisle debating between fresh fruit and canned beans, knowing the envelope couldn't cover both. Some nights, she sat home alone while friends posted pictures of cocktails and neon lights. But slowly, she noticed something unexpected. The discipline gave her peace. She no longer felt the constant anxiety of swiping her card and praying it wouldn't be declined. She knew exactly where her money was going, and for the first time, she felt in control. The resolution came one quiet evening, months into her new system. She sat at the kitchen table, envelopes lined up neatly. Rent, utilities, groceries, bus, fun, investing. She counted the bills one by one, slipping them into their places. Her hands moved with calm precision, no longer trembling. When she reached the investing envelope, she smiled. It was thicker now, $100 folded inside, waiting to be transferred. Her phone buzzed. A friend had posted pictures from a night out, all bright lights and laughter. For a moment, her chest ached, but then she looked back at the envelope in her hands. She whispered, almost reverently, "This is my future," and she believed it. The knock at Maya's door came on a gray Thursday afternoon. Her landlord stood in the hallway, a clipboard clutched under his arm. He was usually brisk and businesslike, but today his face was drawn. "Water heater blew," he said flatly. "Whole unit needs replacing. Everyone's share of the repair is $180. Due by the end of the month." Maya's stomach dropped. "180, she repeated, voice tight. "Sorry," he said with a shrug. "Building policy. Split costs. You'll get the notice in writing." He turned and walked away before she could respond. Maya shut the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. $180. That was groceries. That was her bus pass. That was her investing envelope and her fun envelope combined. The room seemed to tilt. She stumbled to the kitchen table and pulled her envelopes from the drawer. The crisp bills spilled across the surface. rent, groceries, utilities, investing. Her eyes locked on the one marked investing. Inside, $100. Money she had scraped together from canceled subscriptions, skipped dinners, long nights of loneliness. Money that represented discipline, pride, hope. She pressed the envelope to her chest, whispering, "Not this one. Please, not this one." But the math screamed otherwise. That evening, she sat in the library, staring blankly at her open notebook. The words blurred on the page. Every dollar has a job. What was the job of her investing dollars now? To grow her future? Or to save her present? The conflict chewed at her ribs. If she used the envelope for the repair, it wasn't just money she was losing. It was progress, momentum, the fragile belief that she was capable of change. But if she didn't, she risked falling behind on bills, risked overdraft fees, risked spiraling back into the cycle she had fought so hard to escape. Her chest burned with anger, at the water heater, at her landlord, at the cruel timing of it all. Mostly, at herself, for not having planned for this. She scribbled furiously in her notebook. "Where's my safety net?" The words sat there, jagged and accusing. She thought of her mother again, the constant scramble, the emergencies that always seemed to strike at the worst possible time. "Life doesn't wait," her mother used to say, shaking her head over broken cars or overdue bills. "You just deal with it." But Maya didn't want to just deal with it. She wanted to prepare. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind spun with calculations. Could she pick up extra shifts? Could she skip groceries and survive on rice and beans? Could she borrow from Lena, from Marcus, from anyone? Each possibility collapsed under its own weight. By dawn, her eyes gritty with exhaustion, she knew the truth. She didn't have an emergency fund. She had an investing envelope. And for now, they were one and the same. The next evening, Maya walked to the bus stop after work, rain soaking her thin cardigan. She stood under the awning, clutching her bag, watching water streak down the glass. A man beside her scrolled through his phone, laughing at something. Maya wanted to scream at him. How do people laugh when money is always breaking, when life keeps asking for more than you can give? Instead, she closed her eyes and inhaled. "This isn't the end," she whispered to herself. "This is part of the story." Her voice trembled, but the words steadied her. The insight came 3 days later, at the library again. She had buried herself in financial blogs, searching desperately for answers. One article leapt out at her. "The emergency fund, your first line of defense." The words pulsed on the screen. An emergency fund. Not glamorous, not exciting, not filled with growth charts or dividends. Just cash, sitting there, waiting for the inevitable storms. She read hungrily. Experts advise starting small, $500 at first, then 1 month's expenses, then 3 to 6. They called it peace of mind money. Her pen raced across her notebook. Investing is the offense. Emergency fund is the defense. I need both. The realization hit like a jolt of lightning. She had been so focused on planting seeds for a future that she'd forgotten to guard the soil. No wonder one broken water heater felt like a disaster. She had no shield. Maya pulled the investing envelope from her drawer that night. She opened it slowly, almost reverently. $100 stared back at her. Her throat tightened. She hated the thought of using it for the repair. Hated the thought of losing ground. But now she saw the truth. This wasn't failure. This was exactly what the money was for. To protect her. To keep her afloat so she could keep building. She slipped the bills back inside and wrote a new word on the envelope, directly beneath investing. Emergency. The conflict didn't dissolve overnight. When she handed the landlord her share of the repair, her chest ached. She thought of every skipped meal, every lonely night, every canceled outing that had built that envelope. It felt like tearing down a house she had just finished framing. But when she returned home, her apartment warm with the hum of a new water heater, she felt something else too. Relief. She hadn't drowned. She hadn't spiraled. She had absorbed the hit, bent but not broken. For the first time in her life, an emergency hadn't destroyed her. The next Saturday, she sat at her kitchen table with fresh determination. She created a new envelope. This one she labeled Emergency Fund. She slipped a single $10 bill inside. It looked small, pathetic even, but she traced the letters with her finger, whispering, This is where my shield begins. Over the weeks that followed, Maya rebuilt. She set aside $20 each paycheck for her emergency fund, alongside her $50 for investing. Some weeks it hurt. Some weeks it meant rice and beans again. But slowly, the envelope thickened. $50, then $100, then $200. Each bill felt like armor. And with each deposit, her fear lessened. Emergencies would still come. Flat tires, broken heaters, unexpected bills. But now, she wouldn't meet them empty-handed. Resolution arrived one rainy evening in April. Maya sat at the kitchen table, envelopes spread neatly before her. Rent, utilities, groceries, investing, emergency. She opened the last one and counted the bills inside. $500. Her chest swelled. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a foundation. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. For the first time in her adult life, she felt prepared. The storms would still come, but now she had a shield. The envelope sat on the corner of Maya's table, thinner than most, but heavier than all the others combined. It was a credit card bill. She reached for it with hesitant fingers, as if it might burn her skin. The paper crinkled softly as she slid it free, her eyes scanning the familiar numbers. Balance due, $497.82. Minimum payment, $25. Her chest tightened. It wasn't the largest debt in the world. Some people owed thousands, tens of thousands. But to Maya, it was a weight she had carried for nearly a decade, pressing into her ribs like an iron bar. Every month, the bill arrived. Every month, the balance seemed to shrink only by drops. The interest piled on, mocking her small payments. She whispered into the empty apartment, "I thought I'd never get rid of you." Flashback, 19 years old. A bank clerk smiled across the desk, sliding a shiny card toward her. "Congratulations, Maya. You're approved. This will help you build your credit score." 19-year-old Maya beamed, heart swelling with pride. She had no idea what a credit score was, not really. But she understood one thing. This plastic rectangle meant independence. Her first purchase was small. A blouse for work, on sale. Then a pizza with friends. Then a bus ticket she couldn't afford to buy in cash. The charges piled quietly. $50, $75, $120. By the time she realized what was happening, the balance was over $800. And that was just the beginning. Now, years later, the number on the bill had shrunk to under $500, but it still felt like a ghost that haunted her. She ran her fingers across the paper, whispering, "Not forever, not anymore." The turning point came one night in late May. Maya was curled up on the couch, her notebook balanced on her knees. Her laptop screen glowed with articles about debt payoff strategies. Two terms kept appearing: debt avalanche and debt snowball. She read them carefully, lips moving as she whispered the definitions aloud. Avalanche. Focus on paying off the highest interest debt first. Saves the most money mathematically. Snowball. Focus on paying off the smallest debt first. Builds momentum and motivation. Her pen scratched furiously across the page, creating two columns. Avalanche equals logic. Snowball equals psychology. Her brow furrowed. Which one should she choose? The avalanche made sense. Interest was a thief, stealing quietly in the night. But the snowball promised to win. A clean, undeniable victory. And after years of drowning, Maya craved the taste of victory. She wrote in bold letters. Snowball. Card first. Freedom first. Momentum first. From that night, the credit card became her singular target. She cut her fun envelope almost entirely, pouring those dollars toward the balance. Every skipped latte, every evening of beans and rice, every bus ride instead of a rideshare became a weapon. Some nights, the loneliness hit hard. Her friends posted photos of cocktails under fairy lights, laughing in crowded bars. She scrolled through them, stomach twisting, before setting her phone face down on the table. "This is temporary," she whispered. "Debt is not who I am. It's just where I am." But the conflict never stopped pressing. One weekend in June, her friend Lena called with excitement in her voice. "We're going to the lake. Just $60 each for food and gas. You coming?" Maya froze. $60. That was 2 weeks of grocery money. That was 3 extra payments toward her card. "I can't," she said softly. "Come on," Lena groaned. You never do anything fun anymore. Don't you miss living? Maya's throat ached. She did miss it. She missed spontaneity, missed laughter, missed saying yes. But she also knew that every yes to comfort was a no to freedom. I'm working on something, Maya said finally. What? Your money obsession. Lena snapped. Maya, you can't take money with you when you die. The words stung. That night, Maya opened her notebook and wrote through tears. It's not about taking money with me. It's about taking the weight off me. Weeks passed. Each payment chipped away at the debt. $450. $395. $345. Every time she opened the app and saw the numbers shrink, she felt lighter, as if invisible chains were loosening around her wrists. She began to imagine the day she'd see $0. The day she'd print the statement and frame it like art. The image fueled her through exhaustion, loneliness, and temptation. One evening, she confided in Marcus at work. I'm attacking my credit card, she said, stirring her tea. Smart, he nodded. I'm using the snowball method, she admitted, even though avalanche makes more sense mathematically. Marcus shrugged. Math matters, but psychology matters more. You need to win. Once you taste it, you'll keep going. She smiled faintly. That's what I'm hoping. You're not hoping, Marcus said firmly. You're building. Big difference. His words echoed in her chest. By mid-June, the balance was down to $120. Maya stared at the number in disbelief. Less than a tank of gas. Less than a night out with friends. After years of feeling crushed, the weight was now small enough to lift. She created a special envelope that week, labeled Extra Debt. Inside, she placed every spare bill she could find. $20 from skipping a grocery splurge. $15 from walking instead of busing one week. Even $5 from selling an old pair of shoes online. Slowly, the envelope filled. $40. Then $75. Then $120. She ran her fingers across the envelope, heart racing. On a bright June morning, she sat at her table with the envelope before her. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the bills. Her laptop glowed, the credit card portal open. Balance, $120. Her hand shook as she typed the numbers in. Payment amount, $120. She hovered over the button. Her breath caught. She whispered to herself, "This is it." And she clicked. The screen blinked. Refreshed. Balance, $0. The silence in the room swelled. Maya stared, mouth open, eyes flooding with tears. For a moment, she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then she laughed, a wild, broken laugh, covering her mouth with trembling hands. "Zero." She said it aloud, savoring every syllable. "Zero." She pushed back her chair, standing unsteadily. Her knees gave out and she sank to the floor, clutching the envelope to her chest. For the first time in a decade, she was free. That night, she didn't celebrate with champagne or a night out. Instead, she lit a candle, sat at her table, and opened her notebook. On a fresh page, in bold letters, she wrote, "Debt-free from credit cards. June 14th. My first real win." She traced the words with her finger, tears sliding down her cheeks. This wasn't the end. She still had her student loan. She still had savings to build, investments to grow, emergencies to prepare for. But tonight, she let herself feel the victory. She had chosen discipline over comfort, sacrifice over impulse, future over present, and it had worked. For the first time in her life, Maya knew what financial freedom tasted like, and it was sweeter than anything money could buy. The morning after Maya made her final payment on the credit card, the world looked different. She woke to birdsong streaming through the window, sunlight falling in golden streaks across her small apartment. Her chest felt lighter, her breaths deeper, her mind sharper. "Zero." She whispered it to herself again, savoring the sound. "Zero." For the first time in years, she wasn't waking under the shadow of debt. She brewed coffee, poured it into her chipped mug, and sat at the kitchen table, where her envelopes were neatly stacked. Rent, groceries, utilities, emergency, investing. But now that the card was gone, she had freed up $50 a month, money that used to disappear into minimum payments. And that raised a question that gnawed at her all morning. What do I do with this extra money? At work that day, her focus drifted. Numbers blurred on the screen. The hum of keyboards became background noise. She kept hearing two voices in her head. One whispered, "Invest it. Put every dollar into the market. The sooner you start, the bigger it grows. Time is power." The other countered, "Save it. Life is unpredictable. Emergencies come. You need protection first." Maya chewed her lip, tapping her pen against the desk. Which voice was right? That evening, she called Marcus. "I paid off the card," she said, unable to keep the smile from her voice. Marcus chuckled softly. "Knew you would. How's it feel?" "Like breathing for the first time," she admitted. "But now I don't know what to do with the money I was paying. Should I save it or invest it?" There was a pause on the line. Then Marcus said, "That depends. How much would it take to make you feel safe?" Maya frowned. "Safe? Yes. Forget growth for a second. Forget wealth. How much would it take in savings for you to sleep at night without fear?" Maya stared at the wall, the question sinking into her bones. Later that night, she sat with her notebook. Safe. What did that mean to her? She thought of the water heater that had broken, the $180 repair bill that had nearly undone her. She thought of her mother's endless cycle of small disasters: car trouble, medical bills, late fees. Safe meant knowing she could handle the unexpected without unraveling. She flipped to a new page and wrote, "Safety fund goal, $3,000. Her pen hovered. That was nearly 2 months of expenses. Enough to absorb a blow. Enough to breathe. She underlined it twice. But the conflict was far from settled. The next day, during her lunch break, she scrolled through a finance forum. One post showed a chart. If you invest $100 a month starting at 29, you'll have nearly $200,000 by retirement. Wait just 5 years, and you'll have almost half that. Maya's heart raced. The math was relentless. Every month she delayed was thousands lost in the future. She tapped her pen against her tray, torn. If she saved, she might feel safe. But if she invested, she might feel powerful. Safety or growth? Present or future? The tug of war inside her grew louder. The tension boiled over one Saturday morning. Maya stood at the farmer's market, counting the bills in her grocery envelope. A vendor smiled at her, offering strawberries, plump and red. She wanted them, but they would eat half her weekly budget. She walked away, envelope clenched in her fist, frustration burning her chest. "Why does it always feel like choosing one thing means losing another?" she muttered under her breath. Her frustration wasn't just about strawberries. It was about her whole life, saving or investing, security or growth, present or future. Always choosing, always sacrificing. That night, she lit a candle, sat at her table, and opened her notebook. She drew 2 columns, safety and growth. Under safety, she wrote, emergency fund, stability, peace of mind. Under growth, she wrote, investments, future wealth, freedom. She stared at the page for a long time. Then she wrote across the bottom, I don't have to choose. I can do both. The insight was simple, but it cracked her open. She didn't have to live at extremes. She could split the difference. $25 to safety, $25 to growth. Slow, balanced, steady. Not perfection, but progression. She smiled, closing the notebook. For the first time in weeks, she felt calm. The next month, Maya tested her new system. When she was paid, she placed crisp bills in her envelopes, one by one. Rent, groceries, utilities. Then she reached for 2 envelopes, emergency and investing. She slipped $25 into each. Her chest swelled with quiet pride. She had chosen balance. She had chosen herself, both present and future. But the road wasn't smooth. One week, her bus pass was stolen, and she had to replace it. Another week, her mother asked to borrow $50 for a doctor's visit. Each time, Maya felt the pinch, felt the temptation to raid one envelope to feed another. But she didn't. She held the line, even if it meant beans and rice 3 nights in a row. Each time she resisted, she felt stronger. Each time she protected her balance, she felt safer. The resolution came one quiet evening in July. Maya sat at her table, the fan humming softly in the background. She opened her emergency envelope and counted the bills. $600. She opened her investing app and checked her balance. $525. Her lips parted in wonder. Over $1,000 saved and invested. Not much by the world's standards, but monumental by hers. She whispered to the empty room, "I'm not choosing anymore. I'm building." And she believed it. The cicadas outside buzzed like a restless choir, their hum rising and falling with the August heat. Inside her apartment, the air was thick, the ceiling fan clicking in lazy rhythm as it spun above Maya's head. She had worked a long shift that day. Her back still ached from hours hunched at her desk, but something tugged at her mind all through dinner. A nagging curiosity she couldn't silence. She set her plate in the sink, wiped her hands on a towel, and reached for her laptop. The familiar blue icon of her investing app blinked at her from the screen. For weeks, she had been dutifully placing $25 here, $50 there, following her balanced plan. She hadn't checked the account in a while, afraid that the number would be too small to matter. But tonight, she couldn't resist. Her heart pounded as the app loaded. The screen filled. Balance: $552.13. Maya froze. Her mouth went dry. She had started with $500. She hadn't added anything since her last envelope transfer. But now, $52 more? Out of nowhere. She leaned forward, blinking hard, convinced she was misreading the numbers. But they stayed. Bright. Solid. Real. Her hand flew to her mouth. "It's growing," she whispered. The words filled the room like a revelation. Maya sat back, the couch cushion swallowing her, her chest fluttering like wings. She had spent her whole life watching money drain away. Bills, debts, overdrafts, late fees. Her paychecks vanished like water poured into dry sand. But now, for the first time, her money had grown while she wasn't even touching it. She whispered it again, louder this time. "It's growing." A laugh bubbled from her throat, surprised and breathless. She felt like someone who had planted a seed in a forgotten pot, only to stumble across it one morning and see a green shoot stretching toward the sun. For years, she had believed growth was for other people, the lucky, the wealthy, the ones who started with more. Now, she had proof in glowing digits. Her money could grow too. The thrill lit her imagination like fire. If $50 could appear in just a few months, what about 500? What about 5,000? Her mind spun with possibility. She grabbed her notebook, flipping to the page where she tracked her goals. Her pen raced, the words sharp and messy. What if I doubled my contributions? What if I sold my extra stuff and put it all here? What if I put every spare dollar into this? Her leg bounced against the floor, energy buzzing through her veins. She could do it. She could go faster. But even as she scribbled, another voice rose in her chest, quieter, steadier, where you could lose it all if you chased too fast. Her pen stilled. The fire dimmed, leaving her staring at the half-written page. The next evening, at the library, Maya sat in her favorite corner, a small wooden table tucked between the windows and the biography section. She opened her laptop, pulling up finance blogs. If she was going to invest seriously, she wanted to learn more. At first, the articles echoed what she already knew: index funds, compounding interest, long-term horizons. But then she stumbled into a forum, a buzzing, chaotic thread where people posted screenshots of their accounts and bragged about hot stocks and next big coins. Her pulse quickened as she scrolled. One post boasted, "Turned $500 into $5,000 in 6 weeks. Quit my job today." Another shouted, "Crypto's about to explode. Don't miss your chance." Her palms grew damp against the keyboard. Could it be that easy? Could she skip years of careful saving and leap straight into wealth if she just picked the right stock, the right coin, the right bet? She chewed her lip, scrolling faster, hunger rising in her chest. But then, near the bottom, a different comment appeared. "Lost everything chasing fast money. Stick to the basics. Long-term wins. Trust me." Maya's stomach dropped. She stared at the words, her reflection faint in the laptop screen. Lost everything. She closed her laptop with a shaky hand. That night, she dreamed. In the dream, her account balance climbed higher and higher. $1,000, $5,000, $50,000. She laughed, spinning in her tiny apartment, as money poured through the ceiling like golden rain. But then, without warning, the numbers collapsed. 0. Her laughter turned to a scream as the golden rain turned to ashes in her hands. She woke tangled in her sheets, heart pounding, the darkness pressing in heavy. She sat on the edge of her bed, sweat cooling against her skin. Slow, she whispered to the empty room. Stay slow. But the image of those glowing numbers wouldn't leave her mind. The temptation only grew when she met Lena for coffee later that week. I checked my investing account, Maya confessed, leaning across the table. It grew on its own. I made money without doing anything. Lena raised an eyebrow. How much? $52. Lena snorted, nearly spilling her drink. $50. Maya, I make that in tips in one night. Maya's cheeks flushed. Her excitement shriveled. It's not about the amount, she said quickly. It's about what it means. It's proof that it works. Sure, Lena shrugged, scrolling on her phone. But if you really want to make money, you should look into crypto. My cousin doubled his savings in a month. Maya froze. Crypto. Again. Quick wins. Shortcuts. Her pulse throbbed in her ears. Maybe she could leapfrog the slow grind. Maybe she could have what Lena's cousin had. But her stomach twisted. She thought of the words from the forum. Lost everything chasing fast money. She stirred her coffee silently, the tug of war tearing her apart inside. That evening, Maya pulled her investing envelope from the drawer. She slid the crisp bills into her palm, weighing them. She imagined tossing them all into one bet. One coin, one stock, one gamble. She imagined doubling her money overnight. Her chest ached with longing. And then she imagined losing it all. The ache turned to nausea. These dollars were too hard to earn a gamble away, she whispered. Her hand trembled as she placed the bills back in the envelope. She closed the drawer, pressing her forehead against the wood. Slow, she whispered again. Slow. The answer arrived in an unexpected form. It was a Wednesday afternoon at work, the office quiet, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Marcus passed by her desk, pausing when he saw her frown. What's got you tied up? He asked. Investing, Maya admitted. It feels so slow. I keep thinking maybe I should risk more to get there faster. Marcus leaned against her desk, crossing his arms. His eyes were calm, steady. You ever plant a tree? He asked. Maya blinked. No. Well, Marcus said, you put the seed in the ground, right? Water it, give it sun. You don't dig it up every week to check if it's growing faster. You trust the process. You wait. And then one day, it's taller than you are. Maya's lips parted. The metaphor landed in her chest with surprising weight. Marcus smiled faintly. Don't chase fireworks, Maya. Grow trees. That night, she lit a candle, sat at her table, and opened her notebook. On a clean page, she wrote in large, bold letters. No shortcuts. Grow trees. She stared at the words, her pulse slowing, her shoulders loosening. Her investments weren't lottery tickets. They were seeds. And seeds needed time, patience, and care. She closed her notebook with a quiet smile. The glitter of shortcuts still sparkled in her mind, but now she had something stronger to hold on to. In the days that followed, she clung to the tree metaphor. When she felt impatient, she pictured roots spreading underground, unseen but strong. When she saw forum posts about overnight fortunes, she pictured branches stretching slowly toward the sky, unhurried but unstoppable. One evening, she even walked to the park and found herself standing before an oak tree that towered above her, its trunk wide, its leaves whispering in the breeze. She rested her hand against the bark, whispering, "You didn't grow overnight." But look at you now. The lesson sank deeper than any blog post ever could. By September, her balance had grown to $600. Then $625. Small numbers, maybe, laughable to someone else. But to Maya, they felt monumental. Proof that she was no longer powerless. Proof that her money could grow, even when she slept. One evening, she sat at her kitchen table, envelopes neatly spread before her. She slipped her bills into the investing envelope, her movements steady, her breath calm. "This is the long game," she said softly, "and I'm playing it." Her lips curved into a quiet smile. And for the first time, she truly believed it. It was late September, and the air had begun to cool. Leaves hinted at yellow along the edges. The cicadas had quieted, and the breeze that slipped through Maya's window carried the crisp promise of autumn. Maya sat at her desk that evening, sipping tea, her laptop open before her. She hadn't checked her investing account in a few weeks. Each time she did, the numbers had been higher, and she had let herself savor the quiet thrill of progress. Tonight, she clicked the blue icon with easy confidence, expecting another small gain. But when the screen loaded, her breath caught. Balance, $578.46, down from $625. She blinked hard, refreshing the page. The number didn't change. Her stomach tightened. What? She scrolled down. A red arrow pointed downward, sharp and merciless. Her mind spun. She hadn't taken money out. She hadn't done anything wrong. So why was her account lower? A chill prickled across her skin. I'm losing money. She slammed the laptop shut, her pulse hammering. For the rest of the night, she moved through her apartment like a ghost. She reheated leftovers, ate without tasting, washed dishes she didn't remember soiling. But the number followed her everywhere. $578. It wasn't much. Objectively, she knew it wasn't catastrophic. But to Maya, it felt like betrayal. She had worked so hard for every dollar. To watch them slip away, for no reason she could grasp, was unbearable. That night, she lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The ceiling fan clicked in endless rhythm. Maybe I'm not cut out for this, she thought. Maybe investing is just gambling after all. Sleep never came. The next morning, she carried her exhaustion to work like an invisible weight. By lunch, she could barely focus. She slipped out to the park, sitting on a bench beneath the oak tree she had touched weeks before. Her notebook lay open in her lap, but her pen hovered uselessly. I thought I was growing a tree, she whispered, but now it feels like the tree is dying. She shut the notebook with trembling hands. That evening, she called Marcus. I lost money, she blurted as soon as he answered. Her voice cracked. I don't understand. I didn't spend anything. It just disappeared. There was silence on the line, then Marcus's calm voice. How much? $47. Another pause, then a chuckle. Maya, that's a nice dinner out. Not a disaster. Her face flushed hot. It feels like a disaster. I know, Marcus said softly. The first time always does. But listen, markets go up and down. That's normal. Volatility, they call it. You don't lose until you sell. Right now, you're just watching the weather. The weather. Yeah, you don't panic when it rains. You grab an umbrella and wait it out. Investing's the same. Don't pull your tree out of the ground just because of a storm. Maya pressed her forehead into her palm, his words both soothing and infuriating. But what if the storm never ends? She whispered. It always does, Marcus said. History shows us that. The only people who lose for sure are the ones who panic and sell. The rest? They ride it out, and the sun comes back. The call calmed her enough to breathe again. But the next few days tested her resolve like never before. Every morning, she woke with dread. Every evening, she checked her account. $560. $545. $532. Each time, the red arrows stabbed at her chest. Her oak tree metaphor felt fragile now, the image of steady roots replaced by visions of brittle branches snapping in the wind. One night, she even dreamed she stood in the park again, staring at the oak. This time, its leaves fell in torrents, its bark cracked, and when she reached to steady it, the whole trunk collapsed into ash beneath her touch. She woke with tears on her cheeks. The conflict consumed her. Should she pull her money out before it shrank further? Should she double down and buy more while prices were low? Or should she simply ignore it, but risk watching her hard-earned savings vanish? Her chest ached with indecision. By October, her balance sat at $510.22, nearly back to where she had started. A month of sacrifice, wiped away in red digits. She closed the app, hands trembling. I can't do this, she whispered. The breaking point came one Thursday evening. She sat at her kitchen table, bills and envelopes scattered before her, the lamplight harsh against the wood. Her investing envelope sat full, $25 tucked inside. She picked it up, holding it tight. What's the point? She muttered. Why throw good money after bad? Her hand shook as she considered slipping it into her emergency envelope instead. At least there, it would be safe. At least there, she wouldn't have to watch it vanish. But her pen rolled across the table, bumping her notebook open. Her eyes fell on a page she had written weeks earlier. No shortcuts. Grow trees. She froze. The words stared back at her, steady and unyielding. The next Saturday, Maya walked to the park. The air was cool now, the leaves crisp underfoot. The oak tree still stood, tall and proud, its branches thinner but still stretching skyward. She placed her hand on its bark, just as she had before. "You're still here," she whispered. The tree hadn't grown taller in a month. It hadn't produced new leaves or blossoms. But it was alive, solid, rooted. Maya closed her eyes, letting the metaphor sink deeper. Her investments weren't dying. They were weathering a season, just like the tree. And trees didn't panic. Trees endured. She returned home with a new steadiness in her chest. That evening, she opened her envelopes again. Her hand hovered over the investing one. Then, with slow resolve, she slipped the $25 inside. "I'm not quitting," she said aloud. The words filled the room with quiet power. Over the next weeks, Maya practiced a new discipline, restraint. She still checked her account, but less often. She set limits. Once a week, no more. And when she saw the red arrows, she whispered her mantra: weather, not disaster. Storm, not ending. She even wrote it in her notebook. "You don't lose until you sell. Ride the storm." The words anchored her in the tempest. By November, the storm eased. Her balance crept upward again. $525, $540, $555. Not a dramatic rebound, but steady. When she saw the green arrow return for the first time in weeks, she laughed aloud, tears stinging her eyes. It wasn't victory yet, but it was proof. Storms passed. Roots endured. The first snow of the season had fallen the night before. It wasn't much, just a thin sheet of frost clinging to rooftops, a silver dusting across the sidewalks, the kind of snowfall that children scrape together in a lopsided snowballs. But to Maya, it was a signal. Winter was coming, with all its costs. Higher heating bills, thicker coats, and the endless gray days that weighed on her mood like damp wool. Still, as she locked her office drawer and slung her bag over her shoulder that Friday evening, she felt a quiet pride humming in her chest. Her envelopes were in order. Her emergency fund was full, $1,000 neatly tucked into crisp bills. She had resisted the temptation to gamble on risky investments. She had weathered her first dip in the market, and she had found herself steadier because of it. She had roots now, roots that could hold. She pushed through the glass doors of her building and stepped into the icy air, her breath puffing white. Her old Honda sat parked across the street, coated in frost, its silver paint dulled from years of sun and salt. She loved it, despite its age. It had carried her through late-night drives, early morning commutes, and weekends of errands. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. Paid for. Dependable. Or so she thought. When she slid into the driver's seat and turned the key, the engine sputtered, coughed, then growled to life with a shudder. A faint orange glow lit the dashboard, the check engine light. Her chest tightened. "Not tonight," she whispered, tapping the wheel. The car rolled forward, but with each block the steering felt heavier, the sound beneath the hood rougher. She kept glancing at the dash, as if her stare could will the warning light away. By the time she reached her apartment, the Honda let out a grinding sigh, and when she parked, she saw it. Dark liquid pooling beneath the front bumper. Her stomach dropped. She crouched on the icy pavement, breath fogging in the air, and touched her fingertips to the puddle. Oil. Black, sticky, seeping steadily. Her throat closed. No. She barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the puddle widening, swallowing the street, drowning her progress. By morning, she drove, nervously, cautiously, to the mechanic, wincing at each groan the car made. The garage smelled of rubber and grease, the air heavy with heat. She handed over her keys, sat in the plastic chair in the waiting room, and tried to steady her breathing. Time stretched, punctuated only by the buzz of fluorescent lights and the distant clatter of tools. Finally, the mechanic approached. A man in his 50s, grease smudged across his forearms, lines carved deep into his forehead. "It's your head gasket," he said, voice matter of fact. "Not good." Maya leaned forward, gripping her knees. "How much?" He hesitated. "About $850. The number slammed into her like a fist. $850, he finished. His eyes softened, as if he recognized the panic on her face. "I know it's a lot, but you can't ignore it. Keep driving like this, and the whole engine could go. Then you're talking thousands." Maya swallowed, her mouth dry. Can it wait? He shook his head. Not if you want the car to last. She nodded numbly, gathered her bag, and walked out into the biting air. Back in her apartment, she spread her envelopes across the kitchen table. Emergency, rent, groceries, investing. Her hands trembled as she reached for the thickest one. Emergency. She opened it slowly, the faint scent of paper and ink rising from the bill she had stacked so carefully, week after week. $1,000. Her fortress. Her safety net. The proof that she was no longer living paycheck to paycheck. And now it would shrink. She pulled out $850, stacking the bills neatly on the table. The envelope sagged, thinner, almost flimsy in her hand. Only $150 left. Her throat burned. She pressed her palms flat on the table and whispered, "This is what it's for." But the words didn't soothe the ache. That night, tears slipped silently down her cheeks as she lay curled beneath her blanket. She felt cheated, punished for doing everything right. She had saved. She had planned. And still, life had found its way in. In her dreams, she saw her oak tree again. But this time, a storm ripped through the park, lightning splitting branches, rain pounding the roots. She reached out, trying to shield it, but she was small, the storm endless. And yet, even as branches cracked and leaves fell, the trunk remained, scarred, weathered, but standing. She woke with the image carved into her chest. The following afternoon, she found herself confessing to Marcus during their break. "I had to spend $850 on my car," she blurted, her voice raw. Marcus looked up from his coffee, eyebrows raised. "That's rough. Did you have the money?" "In my emergency fund," she said, almost ashamed. Marcus leaned back, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Then you handled it." Maya frowned. "It doesn't feel like handling it. It feels like losing everything I worked for." "No," Marcus said firmly. "You didn't lose. You avoided debt. You didn't put it on a credit card with 20% interest. You didn't take out a payday loan. You planned for this, and it worked." His words landed slowly, like stones sinking into water. Planned. Worked. Could it be true? Marcus sipped his coffee. "Emergencies don't erase progress. They prove it. You save for a reason, and now you get to see why it matters." Her eyes stung. She nodded, unable to speak. That weekend, Maya bundled up and walked to the park. Snow clung to the branches, the world muffled and soft. She found the oak tree, its limbs bare, bark dusted white. She rested her hand on its trunk. "You lost your leaves," she whispered, "but you're still here." The tree stood solid beneath her palm, rooted deep, enduring. And she realized, losing $850 hadn't uprooted her. It had tested her, and she was still standing. But rebuilding the fund tested her patience in a new way. Each week, slipping bills back into the emergency envelope felt heavier than before, like pushing a boulder uphill. $25, then $50, then $40 when money was tight. Some weeks, she wanted to give up, to funnel it all into investing instead, where at least she could see the numbers grow. But she forced herself to remember the oil on the pavement, the relief of cash in hand, the mechanic's warning. Every dollar she saved now was armor against the next storm. And slowly, the envelope thickened again. By January, she had rebuilt it to $600. By February, $800. The progress was slow, but steady. And with each added bill, her confidence returned. One snowy evening, she sat at her kitchen table, cocoa steaming beside her, envelopes spread before her like loyal friends. Her investing one still stood strong. Her emergency one was nearly whole again. She ran her fingers over the crisp bills, a small smile softening her face. "I survived my first storm," she whispered. And for the first time, she didn't feel fear. She felt pride. The snow had melted into gray slush by mid-March. The city streets were slick with puddles, the air damp with the faint promise of spring. Maya sat by the window of her apartment, watching drops of water slide down the glass, her notebook open before her. Her envelopes were stacked neatly beside her tea mug, each one thicker than it had been a year ago. She ran her hand across them with a sense of quiet pride. But despite the progress, a single thought gnawed at her. Credit. She had avoided it for years. Credit cards had once been her undoing, plastic temptation that had left her drowning in late fees and minimum payments. When she finally dug herself out, she swore she'd never touch one again. Cash only. Envelopes only. Safety and paper bills she could hold. And yet, that week at work, she had overheard two coworkers talking about buying homes. You need at least a 700 credit score, one said. Mine's 740, the other replied with a grin. Maya had shrunk in her chair, her cheeks hot. She hadn't even checked her credit in years. She wasn't sure she wanted to, but the thought lingered, heavy as a stone in her chest. The conflict sharpened when she applied to rent a new apartment. Her lease was ending, and she had found a place closer to work, small but sunny, with a balcony where she imagined sipping coffee in the mornings. But when the landlord ran her credit, his expression shifted. Your score is not great, he said, politely but firmly. Maya's stomach nodded. What does that mean? It means I'll need a higher deposit. 2 months instead of 1. The words hit like a slap. She had the money, thanks to her emergency fund. But the sting of judgment, of being measured and found lacking, burned deeper than the cost. As she signed the papers, shame gnawed at her. I thought I was doing everything right, but I'm still behind. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, the hum of her radiator filling the silence. She opened her laptop with trembling fingers and typed, "How to check your credit score." When the number appeared, she winced. Not terrible, not ruined, but not good either. Her chest ached as she stared at the screen. Every mistake of her past seemed to rise like ghosts. The missed payments, the maxed-out cards, the months she had survived on borrowed money she couldn't repay. She shut the laptop, pressing her palms over her eyes. I don't want to go back there, she whispered. But the next day, Marcus found her at lunch, hunched over a notebook with a frown. You look like you lost a bet, he teased, sliding into the seat across from her. Maya sighed. I checked my credit score. Ah. Marcus nodded knowingly. And 620. He whistled low. Not the worst. Not the best. I feel like it's all my past mistakes written in red ink, Maya admitted. Like no matter what I do now, I'll always be stuck with it. Marcus leaned forward. It's not a life sentence. It's just a snapshot. And snapshots can change. She looked up, uncertain. Change how? By showing lenders you're different now. On-time payments. Low balances. Using credit responsibly instead of running from it. Her stomach twisted. Credit is what ruined me. No, Marcus said gently. Choices ruined you. But credit itself is just a tool. Like fire. It can burn you, or it can warm your house. Depends how you use it. Maya chewed on his words, uneasy but intrigued. That evening, she dug deeper. She read articles, watched tutorials, scribbled notes in the margins of her budget notebook. Credit score basics. Payment history. The most important factor. Credit utilization. How much of your limit you use. Length of history. Time matters. Mix of accounts. Not just cards, but loans too. Inquiries. Every application leaves a mark. She stared at the list, overwhelmed. But beneath the fear, a spark of hope glowed. If these were the rules, maybe she could play differently this time. The next weekend, she walked in her bank. The building smelled faintly of polished wood and paper, sunlight streaming through tall windows. She approached the desk, nerves buzzing in her chest. I'd like to apply for a secured credit card, she said, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. The clerk smiled, sliding a brochure across the counter. Of course. You'll need to put down a deposit, $300 minimum. That becomes your limit. Use it, pay it off on time, and over time, your credit score will improve. Maya nodded, absorbing the words. This wasn't like her old cards. This one was a tool, not a trap. She handed over the deposit, signing the papers with a mix of dread and determination. When she left, the card in her wallet felt heavy, almost sacred. The first purchase she made was small, groceries. Milk, bread, apples, chicken. She swiped the card with trembling hands, half expecting alarms to go off, the clerk to glare, her old shame to flood back. But nothing happened. She paid. She went home. She logged in her bank app that evening and immediately scheduled the payment in full. Her chest loosened. This time, she was in control. Over the next weeks, Maya built rituals. Gas on the card. Groceries on the card. Always small, always planned. Every payment was made early, logged carefully in her notebook. Each time she pressed submit, a wave of quiet pride washed over her. She was rewriting her story, one line at a time. But the temptation still lingered. At the mall one Saturday, she walked past a boutique, eyes snagging on a wool coat displayed in the window. It was elegant, deep green, the kind of coat that would make her feel like she belonged in glossy magazines. Her card was in her wallet. Her heart raced. She stepped closer, her reflection staring back from the glass, the coat hanging behind her like a promise. For a moment, the old impulse surged. Swipe now, worry later. But then she pictured her credit score, the red numbers, the shame of her landlord's words. She pictured her envelopes, her oak tree, and she stepped back. She whispered, not this time. By June, she checked her credit score again. It wasn't miraculous. It wasn't a leap to the 700s, but it was progress. She stared at the screen, a slow smile spreading across her face. I'm climbing, she whispered. The days were growing longer, sunlight lingering past 6 o'clock, when Maya spotted the flyer taped to the bulletin board outside her apartment building. Tax prep deadline, April 15th. Don't wait. The bold black letters seemed to shout at her, and her stomach tightened. She tore the flyer down, folded it into her coat pocket, and climbed the stairs with dread in her chest. Taxes. Every year, she had let someone else handle them. Her father, a tax prep service, once even a friend from college who knew a guy. She had never looked closely, never wanted to. Numbers and forms and jargon had always felt like quicksand waiting to pull her under. But this year was different. This year, she was determined to face it herself. At her kitchen table that evening, she spread her envelopes across the surface like familiar companions. Rent, groceries, investing, emergency. They gave her comfort. They were proof she could handle numbers, proof she had built systems, proof she wasn't the same lost girl who had once dodged bills and hidden from overdue notices. And yet, the word taxes scrawled across the flyer still made her hands sweat. She whispered to herself, if I can budget, I can learn this too. Her first step was to research. She opened her laptop, fingers hesitant on the keyboard, and typed, how to file taxes for beginners. The search results exploded. Articles, videos, guides, software ads. Overwhelmed, she clicked a video. The narrator's calm voice explained the basics. Gather your documents, W-2s, 1099s, any forms showing income. Understand deductions and credits. Decide whether to file yourself or use software. Maya scribbled notes furiously in her notebook, the page filling with terms she barely understood. Standard deduction. Itemize. Tax credit versus tax deduction. Filing status. Her head spun, but beneath the confusion, a spark of determination grew. She whispered, I can learn this. I just need to break it down. A week later, her W-2 arrived in the mail, folded neatly inside a pale envelope. She held it like a foreign object, then slid it open with trembling hands. Her earnings stared back at her in black ink. Line after line of numbers. Gross income, federal tax withheld, Social Security, Medicare. She exhaled slowly. This is my year in numbers. For the first time, she didn't look away. She decided to use tax software. The interface was simple, almost cheerful, with step-by-step prompts. Tell us about yourself, it asked. What was your income? Did you have dependents? Maya answered each question carefully, checking her W-2 twice before typing. She felt like she was walking across a frozen lake. Each keystroke a step she feared might crack the surface. When she reached the section on deductions, her anxiety flared again. The software offered options, standard deduction or itemize. What does that even mean? She muttered. She opened a new tab, reading article after article. The standard deduction was simple, a flat amount everyone could claim. Itemizing meant listing expenses like medical costs, mortgage interest, charitable donations. She thought of her envelopes. Rent, groceries. She hadn't donated much, hadn't owned property. Her choice was clear. She clicked standard deduction with relief. Hours passed. The radiator clanked. Her tea grew cold. But Maya pressed on, answering every question, uploading every number. Finally, the screen changed. Estimated refund, $284. Her breath caught. She had expected to owe money, expected punishment for some unseen mistake. But here was a reward, small but real. She leaned back, laughing softly. I did it. The next morning, she met Marcus for coffee. I filed my taxes, she announced, pride swelling in her chest. His eyebrows lifted. By yourself? Yes. With software. And I'm getting a refund. Marcus grinned. That's huge, Maya. Not the money, the fact that you faced it. Taxes scare most people. But now you know you can do it. She nodded, sipping her coffee. The warmth spread through her chest, deeper than caffeine. Over the next weeks, Maya dove deeper, curious now instead of afraid. She read about tax brackets, how income was taxed in layers, not all at once. She learned about credits like the Earned Income Credit, about deductions for student loan interest. She filled pages of her notebook with diagrams and notes, drawing arrows and metaphors. It's like a puzzle, she wrote. Not a monster. A puzzle I can learn to solve. When her refund arrived, she sat at her table, envelopes spread wide. She could have spent it easily. New shoes, dinners out, the wool coat she had once resisted. But instead, she divided it carefully. $100 into emergency, to restore the buffer she had once dipped into. $100 into investing, feeding her growing oak tree. $84 into groceries, easing her monthly load. As she slid the bills into each envelope, she felt something shift inside her. For the first time, taxes weren't a punishment. They were a tool. She had faced them, understood them, and used them to strengthen her roots. Yet the real victory came not in numbers, but in confidence. One evening, as she walked home beneath budding trees, she realized she was no longer afraid of the unseen. Bills, emergencies, market downturns, taxes. They had each tested her. Each had shaken her branches. But her roots held, and she was growing stronger. Spring unfurled slowly that year. The trees that had stood bare for months began to bloom again, soft pink blossoms dotting the park where Maya often walked. Her world was shifting too, her envelopes growing thicker, her credit inching upward, her confidence in taxes solidifying. But beneath the surface, another struggle lingered. It appeared in quiet moments, standing before a cafe counter when she'd promised herself coffee at home, scrolling through online stores late at night, her finger hovering over the Buy Now button, walking past shop windows where mannequins stood draped in effortless elegance. It was a whisper, a tug, a temptation. You work hard. You deserve this. Maya knew the whisper well. For years, it had drained her paychecks, filled her closet with clothes she never wore, stacked books on shelves she never read. She had mistaken buying for healing, spending for self-worth. And though she had grown, though she now budgeted and saved, the whisper hadn't disappeared. It had simply grown quieter. Until one Friday night. She came home exhausted from a long week, her shoulders stiff, her mind buzzing with unfinished tasks. The apartment was silent, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. She tossed her bag onto the couch and opened her laptop. An ad appeared instantly, glossy and inviting. Spring sale. 1 weekend only. Her pulse quickened. She clicked without thinking, the website blooming with colors and promises. Dresses, shoes, handbags. Items she didn't need but suddenly ached for. Her mouse hovered over a dress, flowing fabric, emerald green, shimmering in the light of her screen. It was beautiful. It was on sale. It was calling her. She whispered to herself, I deserve this. Just one thing. Just once. But then her eyes flicked to the stack of envelopes on the table, faintly illuminated by the lamplight. Emergency. Rent. Investing. They stood silent, steady, like sentinels watching her. Her chest tightened. If she swiped her card now, she wouldn't be spending from abundance. She'd be spending from emotion. She shut the laptop abruptly, the image of the dress vanishing into black. Her hands trembled. She whispered, not this time. The next morning, Maya sat in the park, notebook open on her lap. She wrote, what do I want to spend when I'm tired? Lonely? Stressed? She thought of her childhood, when treats had been rewards. Ice cream after good grades, toys after chores. She thought of her early 20s, when shopping had filled the emptiness of breakups, the stress of bills. Spending had never been about things. It had been about feelings. She underlined the words, spending is emotional, not logical. That afternoon, she called her cousin Sophia, a psychology student who had always spoken frankly about emotions. I almost bought something I didn't need last night. Maya confessed. I didn't even want it. I just felt tired. Empty. And clicking made me feel better for a minute. Sophia's voice was calm on the other end. That's normal. Spending releases dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. It tricks you into thinking you're solving a problem when really, you're just soothing a feeling. Maya frowned. So what do I do? Just fight it forever? No, Sophia said. You replace it. You figure out what you're really craving. Comfort, rest, connection. Then you meet that need in a healthier way. The words sank deep. Spending wasn't the enemy. Ignoring her emotions was. That evening, when the urge to shop bubbled up again, Maya paused. She closed her laptop, lit a candle, and curled on the couch with her journal. Instead of asking, what do I want to buy? She asked, what do I really need right now? The answer came slowly. Rest. Warmth. A sense of being cared for. So she brewed tea, pulled her blanket close, and let herself simply breathe. The urge to shop faded, and in its place, peace settled softly. Over the next weeks, Maya began to experiment. Whenever the whisper returned, she paused and wrote. One evening, she realized she wasn't craving new shoes. She was craving confidence before a work presentation. Instead of buying, she practiced her slides until the fear ebbed. Another afternoon, she longed for a fancy dinner. But when she journaled, she realized she wasn't hungry for food. She was hungry for connection. So she invited Marcus for coffee instead. Each time, she chose differently. Each time, she felt stronger. But the real test came on payday. As she withdrew cash for her envelopes, she walked past the boutique with the emerald dress again. It still shimmered in the window, tempting as ever. For a moment, she stood frozen, torn between desire and discipline. Her hand brushed the cash in her pocket. She could afford it. She had the money. But did she need it? She pictured her oak tree, steady, rooted, reaching skyward. Did buying the dress water her roots? Or did it strip leaves from her branches? She stepped back. She whispered, I am more than what I buy. And she walked away. That night, she opened her envelopes with fresh gratitude. Every bill she slipped into investing, every dollar into emergency, felt like an act of defiance, not against joy, but against the illusion that joy could be bought. She realized then that wealth wasn't only measured in numbers. It was measured in freedom. Freedom from the whispers. Freedom from the lies that spending equaled self-worth. She smiled softly, whispering, I'm free. Scene 13 Resolution. Maya's battle with emotional spending revealed a truth deeper than math. Money is not only practical, it is psychological. The lesson of Scene 13 was clear. To master money, we must master ourselves. Spending isn't about things, it's about emotions. And true freedom comes not from resisting endlessly, but from replacing old habits with healthier ways of meeting our needs. Maya had faced the whisper, and for the first time, it no longer controlled her. The air smelled of rain and pavement as Maya stepped out of the office one Thursday evening in late spring. The sky was still bright, streaked with orange and violet, but the city felt restless, horns blaring, people hurrying home, delivery bikes weaving through traffic. Maya adjusted the strap of her worn satchel, her mind buzzing louder than the street around her. Her budget was steady now. Her emergency fund stood strong. Her credit score was climbing. She had even conquered the beast of taxes. But as she walked, a thought nagged at her. Is this it? She had built stability, yes. But growth? Wealth? Freedom beyond the paycheck? Not yet. The idea had been planted weeks earlier when she stumbled across a podcast during her morning commute. The host spoke about multiple streams of income, how relying on one paycheck was like balancing on a single branch. Strong until the storm came. If you want true freedom, the voice said, you need roots that spread wide. Income from different sources. Some active, some passive. That's how you build resilience. The words lingered in her head like a melody. And now, walking home, she thought, maybe it's time to plant new seeds. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, her journal open, pen tapping against the page. She wrote at the top, side hustle ideas. Her mind raced with possibilities. She could tutor students. She had always been good with math. She could sell crafts online. Her hands had loved making jewelry in college. She could write articles, start a blog, walk dogs, even drive for rideshare companies. The options dazzled and overwhelmed her. But one truth stood out. She couldn't keep trading all her time for money. She needed something sustainable, something that could grow alongside her full-time job without consuming her. The next day at lunch, she found Marcus in the break room. He was scrolling on his phone, sipping coffee. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said, sliding into the chair across from him. "Of course. What do you think about side hustles?" Marcus chuckled. "Depends who you ask. Some people swear by them. Others burn out trying to juggle too much." "I don't want to burn out," Maya admitted. "But I also don't want to stay stuck. I keep hearing about multiple income streams, and it makes sense, but I don't know where to start." Marcus leaned forward, his voice thoughtful. "Start with 2 questions. What do you enjoy? And what problem can you solve for someone else? The best side hustles are where those 2 meet." Maya scribbled the words in her notebook later that night. Enjoyment plus problem solved equals side hustle sweet spot. She underlined it 3 times. Over the next week, Maya experimented with possibilities. She helped her neighbor's teenage son with algebra, sitting at the dining table with scratch paper and pencils. When the boy's eyes lit up after solving a problem, something stirred in Maya. She had loved tutoring. She also tried making jewelry again, spreading beads and wires across her kitchen counter. But after an hour, her fingers ached, and she sighed. The spark wasn't there anymore. Then she wrote a short article, a piece about budgeting envelopes, her own story woven through it, and posted it on a personal blog. A handful of strangers commented, thanking her for the advice. Her heart leapt. Words, teaching, sharing knowledge. That was it. Maya decided her first side hustle would be simple, freelance writing on personal finance for beginners. It wouldn't make her rich overnight, but combined what she enjoyed, writing, storytelling, with a problem she could solve, helping others understand money. She signed up for a freelance platform, her fingers trembling as she filled out her profile. She listed her skills: budgeting, saving, credit building. She wrote a bio that wasn't flashy but honest. "I know what it's like to struggle with money. I also know how to rebuild. I write to help others do the same." When she hit submit, her chest swelled with pride. The waiting was the hardest part. For days, no messages came. She doubted herself, wondered if she had been foolish. Who would hire her? She wasn't a financial expert, just someone who had lived through mistakes and growth. But then, one morning, her phone buzzed. A message. A small personal finance blog wanted a 1,000-word article on how to start an emergency fund. Her heart pounded. She whispered, "I can do this." That evening, Maya sat at her table, laptop open, candle burning beside her. She wrote slowly at first, then faster, pouring her story onto the page. She described her first envelope, her first saved $20, her first emergency, the night the car broke down and the fund saved her from debt. She explained step by step how to start small, how to build habits, how to find pride in progress. By midnight, she hit send. When the reply came the next day, she almost cried. "Thank you for this. Your story will help so many people." Payment sent. Attached was $50. Not much, but more than money. Proof. She had planted her first seed. Over the next months, Maya wrote more. Articles on budgeting, investing, the psychology of spending. Some paid little, some more. Each one sharpened her skills. Each one built her confidence. Her side hustle didn't replace her paycheck, but it gave her something more valuable: momentum. And with each deposit, she felt her roots spreading wider. But the true revelation came one evening in July, as she sat under her oak tree in the park. She closed her eyes, imagining the tree's roots underground. Not one root, but many, branching, intertwining, anchoring it firmly. Her income was becoming the same. No longer one fragile root. Her job, but 2, then 3. Writing, tutoring, investing. If one branch snapped, the others would hold. She whispered, "I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm growing." The cicadas had begun their summer chorus, buzzing through the evenings as Maya typed away at her kitchen table. The soft glow of her desk lamp fell across scattered papers, her laptop screen glaring with half-finished paragraphs. The clock ticked past midnight. Maya rubbed her eyes, her shoulders stiff. Her full-time job had drained her all day, and now the side hustle consumed her night. She leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "How long can I keep this up?" she whispered. At first, the extra work had thrilled her. Each article written, each tutoring session held, each deposit in her bank account had been proof that she was growing, building, reaching. But now, weeks into juggling it all, she felt stretched thin. Her mornings blurred into commutes. Her days blurred into office tasks. Her nights blurred into typing, eyes burning, deadlines looming. Even her weekends, once reserved for rest, filled with tutoring appointments and drafts for clients. Her oak tree metaphor kept her grounded. More roots meant more stability. But even the strongest tree, she realized, could dry out if it wasn't watered. And Maya was thirsty for rest. The breaking point came one Saturday. She was supposed to meet Sophia for brunch, a rare chance to connect. But when the morning came, Maya sat staring at her laptop, a deadline looming. Her phone buzzed. "Where are you?" Her chest tightened. She typed back, "I'm sorry. Can't make it. Work." Sophia's reply was blunt. "You're working yourself to the bone. Be careful, Maya." The words stung. She pushed through the day, submitting the article. But that night, lying in bed, she felt the emptiness. What good was extra income if it cost her joy, friendships, balance? The following Monday, Marcus noticed her dragging herself into the office, eyes shadowed, shoulders hunched. "Hey," he said softly. "You look like you're carrying the world." Maya sighed. "I think I bit off more than I can chew. Between work, writing, tutoring, I'm drowning." Marcus nodded knowingly. Side hustles are like fire. Useful, powerful, but if you don't control them, they'll burn you. She frowned. "So what do I do?" "Quit." "Not necessarily. You don't have to quit. You just have to manage your time like you manage your money." The words sank deep. Manage time like money. She wrote them in her notebook that night. Maya began to treat her hours as carefully as her dollars. She drew a circle on the page, dividing it into 24 slices. Each slice was an hour of her day. Work, 8 hours. Sleep, 7 hours. Commute, 2 hours. Meals, chores, errands, 2 hours. That left 5 hours unclaimed. She stared at them, realizing how precious they were. In the past, she had thrown those hours at whatever screamed loudest: deadlines, requests, distractions. No wonder she felt broke in time. Now, she began budgeting them. 2 hours for side hustles. 1 hour for learning. 1 hour for rest. 1 hour for connection. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. At first, the discipline felt strange. When a client asked for a rush article, she resisted the urge to say yes immediately. She checked her time budget first. When tutoring requests piled up, she limited them to 2 sessions a week. And when exhaustion whispered for her to push through another late night, she closed her laptop instead, reminding herself, rest is an investment too. Slowly, balance returned. She met Sophia for brunch again, laughing over pancakes. She spent an evening reading a novel, the kind of indulgence she hadn't allowed herself in months. She even walked in the park without headphones, letting her thoughts drift. And yet, she still worked, still hustled, but with boundaries. The results surprised her. Her writing grew sharper, her tutoring more patient, her creativity richer. By resting, she gave more. One evening, she sat under her oak tree, notebook in hand, reflecting. She realized that time, like money, was finite. Every yes was a no to something else. Yes to another client, meant no to brunch. Yes to midnight work, meant no to restful sleep. She had to choose with intention. The oak tree didn't grow by rushing, by grabbing sunlight from all directions at once. It grew steadily, season by season, its energy distributed wisely. So too must she. The next challenge came when a client offered her double pay for twice the workload. Her pulse quickened. More money, faster growth. But then she opened her notebook, looked at her time budget, and asked the question she had learned to ask. What will this cost me in time, energy, joy? The answer was clear: too much. She declined politely, and instead of regret, she felt relief. As summer deepened, Maya began to notice something new. She wasn't just earning more. She was living more. Her side hustles were steady but contained. Her friendships blossomed again. She felt healthier, more energized. And when she looked at her envelopes, she smiled not just at the money, but at what it represented: growth without sacrifice. One evening, Marcus asked her, "So, how's the balancing act?" Maya grinned. I realized something. Money without time isn't freedom. Time without money isn't freedom either. But when you learn to balance both, that's where freedom lives. Marcus raised his coffee cup. To balance. Maya lifted hers too, the warmth spreading through her chest. To balance. The first chill of autumn arrived one morning in late September, crisp air sneaking through the cracks of Maya's apartment window. She wrapped her cardigan tighter as she poured coffee, staring at the envelopes on her table. For the first time in years, they were full. Not stuffed, not overflowing, but steady, reliable. Emergency. Groceries. Investing. Rent. And yet, as she sipped her coffee, she felt a new unease. I've built stability for today. But what about tomorrow? She remembered overhearing two co-workers the day before. They were older, in their 50s, voices hushed in the break room. I don't know if I'll ever retire. One had sighed. We just don't have enough saved. The words had clung to Maya like burrs. She hadn't thought much about retirement. It had always seemed too far away, like a distant country she'd never visit. But hearing the fear in their voices unsettled her. She whispered into her mug, I don't want to be afraid of the future. That evening, she sat at her kitchen table with her notebook. At the top of the page, she wrote, retirement. The word felt heavy, like a mountain she wasn't ready to climb. She wrote the questions swirling in her head. How much do I need? How do I start? Is it too late already? She opened her laptop, typing, retirement savings for beginners. Dozens of guides appeared, but one article caught her eye. Start where you are. The power of compound growth. She clicked, and as she read, her eyes widened. The article explained how even small, consistent investments could grow into staggering sums over decades, thanks to compounding. Money earning money. Interest building on interest. It showed two people, one who started saving $100 a month at age 25, and one who started at 35. By 65, the first had nearly double the money, simply because they started earlier. Maya whispered, so time is the secret ingredient. Her pulse quickened. She was 29. Not early, not late. Just in time. The next day, she asked Marcus at lunch, do you have a retirement account? He chuckled. Of course. 401k through work. Been contributing for years. Maya frowned. I don't even know if I have that option. You should check. It's basically free money if your employer matches contributions. You put in some, they add some. Free money. Marcus nodded. Think of it like planting seeds in a field you'll harvest decades from now. The sooner you plant, the bigger the harvest. That night, Maya dug through her HR portal. Her heart leapt when she found it. 401k plan available. Employer match up to 3%. She almost laughed aloud. It had been there all along, waiting for her. The decision felt monumental. She sat with her notebook, writing numbers carefully. Her paycheck was modest. Her budget tight, but steady. Could she spare 3%? It would mean less in her pocket now. But more, much more, for her future self. She remembered the oak tree. Roots and branches, growth slow but strong. She whispered, future Maya deserves this. And she clicked enroll. The first contribution was small, barely enough to notice missing from her paycheck. But knowing it was there, growing silently, filled her with a new kind of peace. For the first time, she wasn't just securing this month or this year. She was securing decades. Weeks later, curiosity tugged at her again. She began reading about retirement accounts beyond the 401k. Roth IRA, traditional IRA, tax advantages, withdrawals, contribution limits. It was dizzying at first, the jargon swirling like storm clouds. But slowly, piece by piece, she understood. A Roth IRA meant paying taxes now, but not later, tax-free growth. A traditional IRA meant saving taxes now, but paying later. Both were tools, both ways to plant seeds. She realized retirement wasn't one account, one decision. It was a garden. Different plants, different seasons, all working together. She whispered, I'm not just planting one oak. I'm planting a forest. Her first forest planting moment came when she opened a Roth IRA. She moved $500 from her savings. Not an easy choice, not without hesitation, and deposited it. It felt like saying goodbye to money, but also hello. Hello to the future. Hello to peace. Hello to the woman she would be decades from now. She imagined her older self, hair streaked with silver, sitting under the shade of the oak tree in the park. She imagined her smiling, whispering, "Thank you for planting these seeds." But as Maya learned more, doubts crept in. What if the market crashed? What if inflation ate her savings? What if she never lived long enough to enjoy it? One rainy evening, she called Sophia. "What if I'm saving for a future that never comes?" Maya asked, voice heavy. Sophia was quiet, then said, "Then at least you lived with hope." "But what if it does come, Maya? What if you live to 90, healthy and strong? What story do you want your future self to tell? One of regret, or one of gratitude?" Maya closed her eyes, picturing her future self again. "I want gratitude," she whispered. From then on, the fear lessened. She learned to see the stock market not as a threat, but as a river, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, but always flowing forward. As long as she stayed in the boat, she would reach the horizon. She also learned not to compare. Some people save thousands each month. She saved hundreds, sometimes less. But every dollar was a vote for her future, a signal that she believed in herself. The turning point came one afternoon when she checked her accounts. Her 401k balance had grown, not by much, but by enough to feel real. Her Roth IRA, too, had earned a few dollars in interest. Tiny numbers, but alive, growing. She stared at the screen, tears welling. She whispered, "I'm not just surviving. I'm building a future." That evening, she walked to the park, notebook in hand. She wrote, "Money for today keeps me alive. Money for tomorrow sets me free." She closed the notebook and leaned against her oak tree, leaves rustling above her. For the first time, the horizon didn't scare her. It called to her. The October wind pressed cold fingers against Maya's cheeks as she walked home from work, leaves scattering across the sidewalk. The city seemed restless, shifting from summer's ease into winter's tension. Inside her apartment, the envelopes waited as always, steady, safe. Her retirement accounts, too, were quietly growing. But lately, a new itch stirred within her. Is this all investing is? Retirement accounts and envelopes? She remembered the articles she had read, the podcasts that filled her commutes. They spoke of markets, of stocks rising and falling, of fortunes built through compounding and index funds. And yet, those same voices also whispered warnings. Crashes, risks, losses. The thought unsettled her. She whispered to herself as she made tea. How do I learn to grow without gambling everything away? That night, she curled up on the couch with her laptop and typed, "How to start investing for beginners." Dozens of results appeared. She clicked one guide and read carefully, her heart quickening. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, index funds, ETFs. The words blurred like a foreign language. She scribbled notes furiously, then paused, overwhelmed. Her inner critic hissed, "This is too complicated. You'll lose everything. Stay safe." But another voice, the one that carried her through budgeting and side hustles, whispered louder. Every expert was once a beginner. You can learn. The following Saturday, Maya attended a free workshop at the library titled Investing 101, Demystifying the Market. The room was modest, a dozen folding chairs and a whiteboard. At the front stood a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a warm smile. "I'm Anna," she introduced herself. "I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to teach you how to invest wisely, simply, and safely." Maya sat near the front, pen ready. Anna began. "The stock market is not a casino. It's a marketplace of businesses. When you buy stock, you buy ownership. And while prices may rise and fall daily, the long-term trend, historically, is growth." Maya's pen scratched quickly. "Not casino. Ownership. Long-term growth." Anna drew two lines on the board. One jagged, rising and falling sharply. Another smooth, gently sloping upward. "This," Anna said, pointing to the jagged line, "is an individual stock. High risk, high reward. And this," she tapped the smoother line, "is a broad market index fund. Lower risk, steady growth. Over decades, the latter almost always wins." Maya's chest loosened. "So I don't have to gamble. I can grow steadily." After the workshop, Maya lingered as others left. She approached Anna, nerves fluttering. "I'm new to this," Maya admitted. "I've started a 401k and Roth IRA. but I want to learn more. Without, losing everything. Anna smiled gently. Fear is natural, but fear often keeps people from planting seeds. The secret? Don't bet the farm. Start small. Learn. Stay consistent. Maya nodded, heart steadying. So I don't need thousands? No, Anna said firmly. Even $50 a month into an index fund can grow over time. The market rewards time, not timing. That night, Maya wrote in her journal. Fear whispers, you'll lose it all. Wisdom whispers, start small, stay steady. She closed the notebook, a spark of courage glowing within. The next week, she opened a brokerage account online. Her palms sweated as she filled in the forms, entered her bank details. The dashboard looked intimidating. Charts, numbers, flashing green and red. Her cursor hovered over by. She whispered, this isn't gambling. This is planting. And with one click, she purchased her first shares of a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. It was only $100, but it felt like a mountain. She sat back, exhaling shakily. I'm an investor. The days that followed were strange. She checked her account obsessively, heart racing as the numbers shifted. Up $2, down $3, up $1. It was dizzying. One morning, the fund dipped by $5, and panic rose in her chest. I'm losing money. This was a mistake. But then she remembered Anna's words. The market rewards time, not timing. She pictured her oak tree. Did she panic when leaves fell in autumn? No, because she knew spring would come. She whispered, this is just autumn. Spring will come. Weeks turned into months. The fund grew, slowly, unevenly. Sometimes down, sometimes up, but trending higher. Maya began to relax. She stopped checking daily, started trusting the process. And with every contribution, $50 here, $75 there, her confidence grew alongside her balance. But the real test came in December. News headlines screamed, market plummets. Stocks lose billions. Her stomach knotted. She opened her account, hands trembling. Down $200. Her instinct screamed, pull it out. Save what you can. But then she paused. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly. She remembered Anna's whiteboard, the jagged line rising and falling, but always sloping upward. She remembered her oak tree, shedding leaves in winter, but growing stronger roots beneath the soil. And she whispered, this is winter. I will not dig up my seeds. Instead of selling, she bought more. Just $50. But it felt like rebellion. Rebellion against fear. Rebellion for a future. Months later, as spring returned, the market rebounded. Her balance climbed higher than before. She stared at the screen, tears brimming. She whispered, I stayed. And I grew. Maya's confidence spread into other areas of life. She read books on investing, learning about diversification, bonds, international funds. She watched documentaries on financial history, fascinated by how markets mirrored human behavior. Fear and greed, hope and panic. She realized investing wasn't just about money. It was about psychology, discipline, patience. It was about trusting the seasons. One evening, sitting under her oak tree, she wrote in her journal, the market rises and falls. So do I. But like the oak, I will endure. I will grow. She closed the notebook, smiling. Investing no longer felt like a gamble. It felt like a dance, a rhythm of risk and reward, patience and persistence. And Maya, once afraid, was learning to dance. The winter sun dipped low over the city, throwing long shadows across the cracked sidewalks as Maya made her way home. She tugged her coat tighter, her breath misting in the cold air. Her life felt steadier than it ever had. Savings grew, side hustles blossomed, investments sprouted in index funds and retirement accounts. But a new question had begun whispering in her mind, relentless and insistent. What about real estate? Everywhere she looked, co-workers, family friends, even strangers on the bus, people seemed to carry the same refrain. Real estate is the safest investment. Buy property. Build equity. Stop renting. Her landlord's email reminder for next month's rent echoed in her head. The number felt like money she would never see again, vanishing into someone else's pocket. Maya whispered to herself as she climbed the stairs, am I planting seeds in soil I don't own? That night, she sat at her kitchen table, the hum of the heater filling the silence. She opened her notebook, and wrote at the top of a blank page, owning versus renting. On one side, she wrote equity, stability, investment. On the other, debt, responsibility, risk. Her pen tapped against the paper. Buying a house felt like a dream, almost untouchable. Yet part of her longed for it. A place of her own, walls she could paint any color, soil where her roots could grow. But fear lurked in the margins. Mortgages, down payments, property taxes. What if she failed? The next weekend, she visited her parents. Her father sat at the kitchen counter, reading the newspaper. Maya asked cautiously, "Do you ever regret buying this house?" Her father lowered the paper, raising an eyebrow. Regret? Never. It was hard, sure. Payments, repairs. But every check we wrote built equity. This place is ours. Her mother, stirring soup at the stove, added gently, "But don't rush, Maya. Owning a home is not just freedom. It's also weight. Every leak, every repair, every bill, it's yours." Sometimes renting is lighter. Maya absorbed their words, realizing that both truths could coexist. A week later, she found herself in conversation with Marcus again. "Do you think real estate is worth it?" she asked over coffee. Marcus leaned back, considering. "Depends what you want. If you're buying just because everyone says you should, don't. But if you're ready to stay in one place, build equity, maybe even rent out part of it, then yes, it can be powerful." Maya nodded, frowning slightly. "It feels so big. I can barely imagine saving for a down payment." "Then break it down," Marcus advised. "Start a new envelope. Call it Future Home. Even if it's just $50 a month, you'll be planting seeds. The question isn't, can I buy tomorrow? It's, am I preparing for the option?" That night, Maya created the envelope. She labeled it with careful strokes, Future Home. Inside, she placed her first $50. It was small, but heavy with meaning. Not a promise, not a deadline, just an option. The months rolled on. Maya read books on real estate, watched documentaries about the housing market, even attended a free seminar downtown. She learned the basics: mortgages, down payments, fixed versus variable rates. She learned about house hacking, buying a small duplex, living in one half, renting the other to cover expenses. She learned about REITs, real estate investment trusts, ways to invest in property without owning buildings. Each new piece of knowledge chipped away at her fear, replacing it with curiosity. One Saturday, she joined an open house tour in her neighborhood, more for education than intention. The house was small, with creaky floors and peeling paint. But as Maya walked through the rooms, sunlight streaming across empty walls, she felt something stir. Not desire, not yet, but possibility. She imagined painting the walls, planting a garden, maybe renting a room to help with the mortgage. She imagined her life rooted in bricks and beams, not just fleeting leases. And she whispered, one day, but doubt still circled. One evening, over dinner with Sophia, Maya confessed, "What if I never save enough? What if housing prices keep rising faster than I can catch up?" Sophia reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Then you'll do what you've always done, adapt. You don't have to own to be stable, but you do have to prepare if you want the choice. Keep saving. Keep learning. Options are power." Maya nodded slowly, comforted. Options, not chains. Her first tangible step came when she increased her Future Home envelope to $100 a month. She cut back on small luxuries, fewer coffee shop visits, thrifted clothes instead of new. It wasn't deprivation. It was reallocation. Each deposit felt like a brick, stacking slowly, building invisible walls around her dream. By spring, the envelope swelled thicker. Not enough for a down payment, but enough to show progress. Enough to shift her mindset. She no longer thought of herself as just a renter. She thought of herself as a future owner, of property, of stability, of possibility. And when she lay awake at night, she didn't feel fear pressing on her chest. She felt choice. But real estate wasn't only about ownership. Maya also began exploring alternative paths. She opened a small REIT fund through her brokerage account, investing just $200. It gave her exposure to real estate without the weight of mortgages or maintenance. Watching it grow, even slightly, taught her something important. She didn't have to wait decades to participate. She could start now, small and steady, just like with stocks. And with each step, she whispered, I'm building bricks, one by one. The turning point came one evening, when her landlord emailed another rent increase. Maya stared at the number, frustration rising. But instead of despair, she felt resolve. This isn't wasted money, she said aloud. It's temporary rent, buying me time to prepare. She pulled out her envelope, added another $100, and smiled. Every dollar is a brick for my future home. Scene 18 resolution. Maya's exploration of real estate revealed a deeper truth. Ownership is not an obligation, but an option. The lesson of Scene 18 was clear. You don't need to buy tomorrow. But by saving, learning, and investing steadily, you prepare yourself for the choice. And choice is power. Maya was not yet a homeowner, but she was no longer just a renter. She was a builder, of options, of knowledge, of bricks laid slowly toward freedom. Spring returned with its soft breezes, painting the city in shades of green. The oak tree in the park where Maya often journaled was blooming again, its branches stretching toward the sky, alive with fresh leaves. Sitting beneath it one Saturday morning, notebook balanced on her knees, Maya felt something stirring inside her, a question she hadn't dared ask before. What happens when I have enough? What comes after me? Her financial journey had begun in survival, counting coins, worrying over bills, clawing her way from scarcity to stability. Every dollar had been for her present, her security, her future. But now, for the first time, she felt a flicker of abundance. The envelopes were no longer thin. Her accounts grew steadily. The future home, envelope thickened month by month. She had plans, discipline, momentum. And now, another voice whispered, maybe freedom isn't just for me. That evening, she visited her parents. The table was crowded with food, arroz con pollo, beans simmered in clay pots, warm tortillas stacked high. As they ate, Maya noticed her mother quietly folding cash into a small envelope, then tucking it into her purse. What's that for? Maya asked. Her mother smiled. For Rosa. You know, the widow on our street. She's struggling since her husband passed. I drop by sometimes with groceries or a little cash. Maya blinked. Her mother didn't have much to spare, yet she still gave. Her father added softly, we were helped once too. Long ago, when we first came here. Neighbors brought food when times were hard. We give now because someone gave to us. Maya felt a lump in her throat. She thought of all the times she had been helped. Marcus's encouragement, Sophia's advice, even Anna's workshop at the library. Her whole journey had been shaped by gifts from others. That night, she wrote in her notebook, true wealth isn't just what you keep. It's what you pass on. The idea lingered for weeks. At work, she overheard colleagues discussing donations to local charities. On her commute, she saw volunteers handing out blankets to the homeless. At the library, she stumbled upon a book titled, The Legacy You Leave, Wealth Beyond Money. She borrowed it, devouring its pages late into the night. It told stories of ordinary people who had created extraordinary change, not with millions, but with consistency. Teachers who set up scholarships with modest savings. Neighbors who funded food banks. Families who gave their time as much as their money. The book's refrain echoed, we all leave a legacy. The question is, what kind? Maya felt torn. A part of her whispered, you're not ready. You barely have enough for yourself. Focus on your future first. But another part, stronger, countered, if you wait until you feel rich, you may never give it all. Start small. Grow into it, like everything else. One evening, she called Sophia. Do you ever think about giving? Maya asked. Sophia chuckled. You mean like donations? Of course. I tithe at my church, even when money's tight. It reminds me I have enough, and it connects me to something bigger. But don't you feel like you need to take care of yourself first? Sure. But generosity doesn't have to be all or nothing. It's not about amounts. It's about intention. Start with $10, if that's all you can do. What matters is opening your hands. Maya sat quietly, absorbing the words. Opening your hands. The following Saturday, Maya tried. She withdrew $20 from her ATM, crisp bills warm in her pocket. At the grocery store, she paid for an older woman's basket quietly, slipping away before thanks could come. Her heart pounded, cheeks flushed. It was small, almost insignificant. But walking home, she felt lighter, freer. She whispered, "So this is what it feels like to give." Encouraged, Maya created another envelope. She labeled it with careful strokes, "Giving." The first $20 went in, then $40 the next month. She didn't set rigid rules. She let it grow naturally, a seed of kindness alongside her other envelopes. Sometimes the money went to a food pantry. Sometimes to a struggling student she tutored, covering their exam fees. Sometimes to her parents' neighbor, Rosa. Each act was small, but each made her world feel larger, more connected. One evening, she brought the idea to Marcus. "I've started a giving envelope," she confessed shyly. Marcus smiled warmly. "That's powerful, Maya. Most people wait until they're wealthy to give. But giving now, that shapes who you are." She frowned. "But isn't it foolish? Shouldn't I save every penny for myself?" He shook his head. "Money isn't just numbers. It's energy. When you give, you remind yourself you're not trapped by scarcity anymore. You're saying, 'I have enough to share.' And that mindset, that's wealth." Maya nodded slowly, the truth settling in her chest like warmth. The turning point came months later. Her tutoring student, a shy 16-year-old named Elena, confessed after class, "I can't afford the SAT fee. My parents don't have the money." Maya felt a pang. She knew the fee was $60. She also knew her giving envelope had $80 inside. She didn't hesitate. "I'll cover it," Maya said softly. Elena's eyes widened. "Really? What?" Maya smiled gently. "Because someone once helped me, and now it's my turn." The gratitude in Elena's face was more rewarding than any deposit slip. That night, Maya sat under her oak tree, tears streaking her cheeks, whispering to the branches, "This is wealth. This is freedom." As her practice grew, Maya began thinking of legacy, not just acts of giving, but the impact she wanted her life to leave. She imagined scholarships for first-generation students, a foundation to teach financial literacy, workshops in her community library, like the one Anna had hosted for her. The ideas scared her. They seemed too big, too ambitious. But then she remembered, every forest begins with a seed, and she already had her first envelope. Months later, she attended a local community meeting. Volunteers discussed raising funds for a new youth program. Maya, heart pounding, stood up. "I can contribute $100, she said. The room went quiet, then erupted with applause. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a beginning. Walking home that night, Maya realized something profound. When she first began her journey, money had been chains. Every bill, every debt, every shortage had bound her tight. But now, money had become wings. It carried her forward, upward, not just for herself, but for others. And she whispered to the night air, "This is my legacy, to give, to plant trees whose shade I may never sit under." The evening air was warm and heavy with the scent of lilacs as Maya walked toward the park. The city hummed softly in the background, cars rolling past, children laughing in the distance, the rhythm of ordinary life carrying on. She carried her notebook tucked beneath her arm, the same one she had filled over the years with calculations, budgets, fears, dreams, and declarations. The pages had become a map of her journey, a chronicle of survival turned into growth. At the center of the park stood her oak tree. Its branches stretched wide now, heavy with green, casting a broad circle of shade. She lowered herself onto the familiar patch of grass beneath it, resting her back against the trunk. She breathed deeply, closing her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she felt not just safe but free. Maya's mind drifted back to the girl she had been at the beginning, sitting at her kitchen table, clutching overdue bills, drowning in shame and fear. She remembered the despair, the endless calculations that never added up, the panic of living paycheck to paycheck. And she smiled sadly. That version of herself had no idea what was coming. The struggle, yes, but also the strength she would find along the way. She opened her notebook and flipped to a blank page. At the top, she wrote, "My story of money." The words seemed surreal. Once, money had been her enemy. Unpredictable, cruel, suffocating. But now, it had become her teacher, her tool, even her ally. She thought of each stage of her journey. The envelopes, small, simple, but powerful. They had taught her control, clarity, structure. The credit repair, humbling, but healing. Step by step, She had rebuilt trust not just with banks, but with herself. The retirement accounts, distant but real. Seeds planted in soil she might not touch for decades, but already sprouting quietly beneath the surface. The index funds, terrifying at first, then liberating. She had learned to dance with risk, to ride the waves instead of fearing them. The real estate dream, still distant, but now possible. She was laying bricks, one by one, toward the option of ownership. And finally, giving, perhaps the greatest revelation. That money was not just survival or security, but a way to shape lives beyond her own. As she reflected, Maya realized that her journey had not been about money at all. It had been about becoming. Money had been the mirror showing her fears, the arena testing her discipline, the soil nurturing her patience. But the real wealth was the person she had grown into. She whispered into the quiet air, "I am no longer surviving. I am living." A voice startled her. Talking to the tree again. She turned to see Marcus approaching, carrying 2 coffees. He smiled, handing her one as he sat beside her. Maya laughed. Maybe. It's a good listener. They sipped quietly for a moment, watching the sunlight scatter across the grass. Marcus glanced at her notebook. Writing something new? Finishing something? Maybe, Maya replied softly. My story. Or at least, this chapter of it. He nodded thoughtfully. So what's the biggest thing you've learned? Maya looked at him, then back at the tree, thinking carefully. That money is never the goal. It's the tool. The goal is freedom. The goal is peace. The goal is being able to choose, without fear, without chains. Marcus smiled. Sounds like you've earned it. Later that night, Maya returned home. She lit a candle on her desk and laid her notebook open, writing with deliberate strokes. Lessons I've learned. Start small. Even the tiniest steps build momentum. Budgeting is not restriction. It is permission. Debt is heavy, but discipline makes it lighter. Investing is planting, not gambling. Time is the water. Real estate is an option, not an obligation. True wealth is not measured by what you keep, but by what you share. She paused, then added, money is a mirror. It reflects who you are becoming. As the candle flickered, Maya leaned back and thought about the future. She imagined herself 10 years from now, perhaps walking through the front door of her own home, walls painted with colors she had chosen, shelves lined with books she had collected. She imagined a scholarship fund in her name, helping students like Elena reach dreams that once felt impossible. She imagined workshops in her community library, teaching budgeting and investing to people who, like her once, believed they were too far behind. She imagined her parents resting easy in their old age, knowing their daughter had built a life of stability and generosity. And she imagined herself beneath this same oak tree, older, wiser, smiling at the seeds she had planted in the forest they had become. Maya closed her notebook with finality. The story wasn't ending. It was unfolding. But she understood now. Financial freedom was not some distant destination. It was here, in every choice she made, every seed she planted, every act of generosity she shared. It was not about numbers. It was about becoming the kind of person who could stand tall, like an oak tree, rooted and free. She blew out the candle, the smoke curling upward like a prayer.